Cindy Allison Jackson beats down on some enhancement talent. Mr. Anthony is swinging for the fences. And at the end of the night, Chain Reaction bonks Crosby Thorne over the back of the head. I am 2020 United States presidential candidate Zach Hardy, and this is Intensity in a nutshell. Sorry for missing last week's episode of Intensity and last week's episode of Severity. I have been battling a cold, and not that it has gotten the best of me and or I have not been able to do my due diligence as filming videos, but my voice was so shot you could not recognize me from the audio alone. And just for fair warning, from this past Monday and next Monday, the Hardy Complex will be taking 2 weeks off as Sound Guy and Booth Guy have been put on vacation for 2 weeks because they've been doing too damn much. When it comes down to it, ladies and gentlemen, we did not miss very much. We're in the thick of it when it comes down to booking towards Bulletproof, and when it comes down towards booking the shows and putting them all together from Intensity and Severity, working their way towards Bulletproof. We're going to be seeing some things that are kind of just sent for filler. A lot of these shows are just going to be which one was not worse. And that's kind of how we're going to have to play it. You know, we're going to have to work it really by ear since both shows are building towards Bulletproof. There is no clear end game in mind other than Bulletproof. So we're just both working onto the same track. But nevertheless, we open the show with Suzuki Kirikashi and Tanner Wallace off of the back heels of a loss at Brimstone to Blaine North and Samuel North, to a barrage of new Northern Lights chants, pretty much cracking down on what we all essentially have heard a million times before. The goal is to take everybody involved in the Promised Land and everybody else can shudder, and that plan will not change. The Martin brothers, however, have something to say about it, running them down as individuals that think they can come onto Intensity and take their Severity bullshit with them to the Intensity brand and make it work, which is just not possible. Kirikashi and Wallace also then run down the Martin brothers, saying, well, if they knew something about not taking something from Severity and to Intensity and making it successful, it would be the Martin brothers. They then challenge Tanner Wallace and Suzuki Kirikashi, who I guess we can still call the Promised Land if we really want to. They challenge them to a match later in the night. Kirikashi and Wallace have a console. They decide to decline the match for that night and instead make a tag team match for Bulletproof 11, which makes it very skeptical. Then the Martin brothers look it over in their own console and decide to accept the match for a tag team match at Bulletproof, which means we're getting a somewhat meaningless tag team match at Bulletproof, which means you can only assume over the next couple of weeks it's going to have some meaning. What does that mean? Well, we'll most likely see the Martin brothers start to fall apart, if not completely fall apart altogether. I think it will be the starting block for an eventual and inevitable breakup of the Martin brothers, but it's going to be interesting to see exactly how it plays out, and if the Martin brothers break up because one joins the Promised Land. It only makes sense. The Promised Land have a goal in mind. They can't really be the Promised Land when they're just a tag team. They need to be a stable. The 3-man, 4-man, 5-man group kind of works. It's working with Metric. It worked with the God Complex, and it's going to work quite often. So when it comes down to it, it would not be shocking if the Martin brothers broke up because one joins the Promised Land. As a matter of fact, it would make the most sense. Please, dear God, let it be Alex Martin that turns heel. Moving on from that portion, we go right into an interview with Crosby Thorne and Nathan Greenway about the Red Belt Championship picture and the Red Belt Champion Chain Reaction in specific, who Crosby Thorne says his attention is directed 100% to still, no matter his loss a number of weeks ago at Hellfire, to said Chain Reaction. His goal is still inevitably on the mind of capturing that Red Belt Championship from Chain Reaction when Anarchy and the Stargazers, USW Tag Team Champions, and Metric Stargazers walk into the picture and kind of just cut down on Crosby Thorne for being some guy that thinks he can walk in and own the place. Anarchy then challenges Crosby Thorne to a match later in the night. Crosby Thorne accepts after kind of staring him down and measuring him out to see what kind of a man he is, and then he leaves. Coolio. Match number 1 is Weiler and Derek Carter beating Benny Franklin and Simon Saint. This was a pretty good match. After the conclusion of the match, Simon Saint goes to attack Derek Carter, and Weiler beats him down with a steel chair, forcing him and Benny Franklin to retreat right afterwards, signifying some sort of a protective kind of installment of a bond between Weiler and Derek Carter, and perhaps a villainous "we hate the same people, so we must be friends" ally between Simon Saint and Benny Franklin. Hell, give Franklin something to do until Hills comes back, give Derek Carter something, and give Weiler and Benny Franklin a reason, Weiler and Simon Saint a reason, any reason, to just not face the same people or each other over and over and over again until Oblivion decides to suck us all off. Afterwards, Dwayne Porter gets in the backstage segment promo spot of the night, reminding Dustin Raymond that he is still the Blue Belt champion and that the feud that they had over the years for the Blue Belt championship, for the USW championship, and just without championships on the line period, has never died down, and the fire is only gone onto the back burner, and this will be no different at Bulletproof as Dwayne Porter aims to take out Dustin Raymond once more. Match number 2 gets underway. The Marvelous Brothers in Arms defeat the Wine Cellar. My single complaint is, what the fuck are you doing to the Wine Cellar? They deserve so much more. But afterwards, MP45 hit the post attack on the Wine Cellar, Xavier King, and Zach Arden, more in specific, essentially just running them down and throwing them into the side of the commentary table, which I like the effect of the commentary table other than being thrown through the commentary table. Essentially setting up a MP45 versus Wine Cellar feud match thing for Bulletproof, which I'm liking. Afterwards, we get into an interview with Tyreek Carver, who is questioned by Nathan Greenway about his motives after failing to become the #1 contender for the Blue Belt Championship the past intensity that I was too sick to be able to give you a rundown on. But before he can answer in full, he is attacked from behind by Mr. Anthony, who beats him down with his signature hockey stick handle, and afterwards then smacks him across the head with said hockey stick handle like a baseball bat, aiming for the fences. God, Mr. Anthony, you are a Louisville slugger. This essentially continues up the feud in this little boiling escalation of Mr. Anthony wants a Blue Belt title, Tyreek Carver wants a Blue Belt title, neither of them can take the Blue Belt title, saying they must hate each other. And then eventually Mr. Anthony just pretty much yells to Tyreek Carver's unconscious body at the interview desk that if he can't get a Blue Belt championship match at Bulletproof 11, then he's going to face Tyreek Carver. So we essentially have just officialized Tyreek Carver versus Mr. Anthony for Bulletproof at the end of November. I'm all for it. I think Mr. Anthony and Tyreek Carver may be the most underrated key pieces in USW's booking today. And I am all for it, other than Chain Reaction, who, again, is phenomenal. And then we get into match 3 right away. Cindy Allison Jackson with Haley Osser in her corner beat some enhancement talent. I don't remember what the name was. I assume they just came in for a 15-second squash match. But after the match is where we really get into the bread and butter. Jade Oliver and the remainder of the Modern Day Royalty, which was established last week. Sorry, you missed a little bit. Jade Oliver, Her Equinox, and Dina Lawson are the individuals comprising of Modern Day Royalty. They are the individuals that pop up on the Motiontron and scattered down to Haley Osser and Cindy Allison Jackson about their shortcomings over the past couple of months, failures to win the USW Women's Championship, or even be able to contend for the Women's Championship altogether. Haley Osser pretty much runs down the Modern Day Royalty for at least, for Osser and Cindy Allison Jackson to at least have the balls to tell them this to their face. Meanwhile, Modern Day Royalty has to stand behind a Motiontron. Modern Day Royalty then obviously goes into the typical flex heel kind of fashion. You're welcome, ding, nod to the chin of, well, you're outnumbered and we don't want to take advantage of that, which then prompts Haley Osser and Cindy Allison Jackson to propose that if they were to find a third teammate, would there be the opportunity for a 3-on-3 tag team match at Bulletproof 11, which Jade Oliver is quick to accept. And by quick, I mean she has to hesitate and back stumble about 2 or 3 times before going, all right, fine, you got your match. So there's a boatload of different options. There's a boatload of different possibilities as to who Osser and Allison Jackson could take as their teammate going into Bulletproof, but we'll have to wait over the next coming weeks. This is at least something that gives the next couple of shows something worth watching for, since you've got till the end of November to book this. You've got about 3 more weeks. You could have their partner be revealed next week, the week afterwards, or the 1 week prior to Bulletproof. So the unpredictable nature, gives her a reason to watch the show. Afterwards, we get into an interview with James, who is asked about Zach Hardy and the remainder of Metric going into Bulletproof, as they will be the main event, most likely, of Bulletproof for the USW Championship. James just pretty much says, in short, that Zach Hardy is a future Hall of Famer. He's a guy that's been there since day one. He's a guy that a lot of people looked up to, and he's a definite threat to his world championship reign, but at the same time, James sees him as no more than just a cheap man looking for cheap tricks to take the title off of James in a pit of desperation, which is really the vast majority of what the feud's been built off of to begin with, so great to have the confirmation. We get into the main event, match number 4. It is Crosby Thorne against Anarchy. Crosby Thorne picks up the victory over Anarchy. The fantastic final moments were Anarchy going for the Chaos Theory and missing, then Crosby Thorne hitting him with the Thorn Bush, then the Stargazers trying to get involved, and they both get hit with the Thorn Bush, then Anarchy goes for the Chaos Theory again, and he also misses again, and then gets hit with the Thorn Bush again, and Crosby Thorne picks up the victory. So Crosby Thorne essentially just wiped Metric off of the face of dignity itself, until the hero and the savior Chain Reaction runs out and blasts Crosby Thorne over the back of the head with the Red Belt Championship, pretty much signifying, yeah, bitch, what now? Which I just kind of thought was funny, because that's exactly what you would imagine his reaction being. But overwhelmingly, this was a pretty good show for something that's trying to build something and is just in the middle. They don't really have much new to work with. They can't do anything really now innovative at this stage of the game, because then you don't have enough time to really execute it properly, and you inevitably kind of lose out on that innovative idea. Save it for a rainy day when it could make a man's career. Don't think that really kind of does anything for this sort of show. So obviously it's building off of something that has already been built. It's really just a renovation, and when it comes down to it, if you were to build a square, you'd build a square, but afterwards, if you wanted to add on to it, whatever you add on to it is either going to be loved or hated. It's all going to be based off of perspective, and when it comes down to this, I liked the show. I thought it had something worth watching. I thought the Martin Brothers and the Promised Land, or more importantly, Kirikashi and Tanner Wallace, I thought that segment had a nice little pretty little ode to what the future could possibly be for Bulletproof, and why a random tag team match would be made for Bulletproof. But nevertheless, I gave you the chance. I digress. We get into, obviously, the main event, where Chain Reaction still looks strong. James and Zach Hardy, even without Zach Hardy being on the show, James still ensures that the feud has some fire to it. Dwayne Porter tries to capitalize on the fire that Dustin Raymond and he had in their feud a number of years ago. I don't necessarily know if it was effective. I wasn't necessarily sold on it. I wouldn't be sold on it unless, Dustin Raymond did what he did a couple of years ago in their feud for the USW title, where he bloodied Dwayne Porter to add a simmer to the feud, or another little layer to the feud. And then the little things I mean, MP45's attack on Wine Cellar was great and all. Cindy Allison Jackson and Haley Osser adding that unpredictable who's the third partner going to be element to it made a nice little road for a reason for people to watch going forward. And I think out of anything, the only real, I don't even want to say low point, but the only real questionable what does this do for the product position was Weiler coming to the aid of Derek Carter, and Benny Franklin and Simon Saint kind of unifying under a similar hatred. So it made sense in the most basic form, but aside from that, was it a show that was worth watching? No, I think you could have gone with missing it. But if I give it out of 5 stars, I would give it a moderate 2.5. I think it was right in the middle of the road. It didn't do anything really new. It didn't do anything bad. And I think what they tried to do was done with enough care that they had, and I think it worked, and I think it was done well. I don't think there was really a low point on the show other than the Cindy Allison Jackson versus Enhancement Talent match, which was 15 seconds. So out of a 2-hour show, 15 seconds of a bad out of that thing was the only bad part. I think that is more than doable, or more than serviceable. I'm fine with that. I loved the Anthony versus Carver segment. I thought that added a brilliant new element to Anthony, because we get to see that hockey stick handle again, which is just raw. It's a great signature to his character. And yeah, fun show. Was it, as I said, was it completely and utterly unmissable? No, not by any stretch of the mean. It was a average show. It was middle of the road. They worked with what they could work with, and they did well with it. They didn't hit a low point, and props to them for it. Let's see how severity holds up, and let's see where we decide to go with our decision next week. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. You can find me on Twitter at ZACHARYSERRA and on Instagram at THEZACKHARDY. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. I am Zach Hardy, 2020 U.S. presidential candidate, and I am stupidly signing off. You get 3 winks today.